Well, we made it through the pilot episode. Or did we? Get in the car and join me for part 2 of my conversation with a figure skating queer librarian minister friend of mine, just making her way in the world like the rest of us. That's next. Hello and welcome to pilot episode 1B of Get in the Car, the podcast where you can hear conversations confined to the car. I'm Will Stevenson. Thank you for listening to part 1 of the pilot. I'm glad you made it this far. Then again, so did I. Anyway, in case you're just joining us, what I'm doing with this podcast is talking with and interviewing people from all walks of life as we take a road trip in the car to and from a particular destination. More or less, I anticipate each conversation to be brought to you in 2 parts. In this case, both parts are with my friend Rebecca Yowler. She's a college librarian, a minister, a figure skater, and as she referred to it in part 1A, queer. To me, she's got a story you should hear. And that's where we continue during a conversation that took place as I drove Becca one day recently to and from an out-of-town figure skating practice. In part 1, we talked about Becca growing up and eventually coming out and how she's fighting the good fight with her mental health. A key to that is figure skating, and that's where we pick things up. Just think of me as the Jim McKay of podcast hosts.
That band of innocents who provided us with some of the most remarkable and emotional moments that any of us had ever seen anywhere.
With this disclaimer, there was a bit of a technical issue with the sound quality of the conversation recording, something we'll have fixed for the next series of episodes, I promise. So buckle up for Get in the Car's Wide World of Sports.
Not even quite 3 until I was 18. I danced. I did ballet, and I was on point for a very long time, I think 9 years. I loved ballet very much, but I was not given the body type to be a ballet dancer. I am short, and I have a large chest. Those are not things ballerinas get to have.
You're not that short.
I'm only 5'4", and ballerinas are usually at least 5'6" to 5'9".
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Huh. Show how much I know.
Tall, thin, beautiful limbs. These are not things that I am.
No. Now, see, that's making me think about, although, again, exit ramp here, that speaks to me now, I guess knowing what I know about society now is that, boy, that seems to really go against body positivity.
It's not a body positive career. And it's not a body positive, I mean, dance in general can be now.
Yeah.
But I wasn't interested in any, I liked tap and jazz kind of, but I loved ballet.
Yeah.
And I was not born with a ballerina body. I have the feet. I have a natural turnout, so I have the quote-unquote feet to be a dancer, but it was just not in the cards for me to, pursue dance in anything other than a hobby. So I was getting ready to go off to college anyway, so it was kind of like one of those natural, okay, time for this to maybe end things. So as a first year in college, I joined a sorority, and I'm a Phi Mu, and I loved it. And I went to Transylvania University. That is in Kentucky, not Romania. Transylvania means across the woods in Latin.
The one where they take your blood, not the one where...
Yes.
Right.
Transylvania means across the woods in Latin, and It was literally across the woods. It was the first college west of the Allegheny Mountains. It's the 13th oldest college in the United States.
Really? Wow.
It was founded in 1780 before Kentucky was even a state. It is a beautiful campus, historic campus, a gorgeous place, but it happens to be called Transylvania, and the mascot currently is a bat.
Of course it is.
The Rafinesque bat, discovered by Constantine Rafinesque, who actually cursed the college, and his tomb is on campus, and during Rafinesque Fest, people sleep in the tomb to ward off the curse. hurt, but that's another story.
Wow, I feel like we went from an episode of Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom to you're older than me. If you don't know that reference, you are getting out of this car right now.
I do.
This is indeed the land of adventure.
So, yes.
We went from Wild Kingdom to
Ghost Hunters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. So, Transylvania University, they required that every student take 2 PE classes as part of the liberal arts curriculum.
My college didn't do that.
They did also things like social gaming, where you could learn to play poker.
That's fantastic.
Ballroom dance, and there were all sorts of options, golf, for your PE class. And one of the things they offered was ice skating.
Okay.
And my sorority sisters and I, my pledge class, a bunch of us decided to take it together. So we took ice skating as our PE. And so we would go to the rink together, and I was one of the kids with cars. We'd load up our cars, and I'll go. And I fell in love immediately. The connection between what skating you do with your body and what ballet you do with your body, it was a natural, it was really a natural fit. And I did, in ballet you call it an arabesque, in skating you call it spiral. I did one. The coach said, "That's beautiful. Have you ever thought about skating?" And I was like, am skating? He said, "No, I mean like competing." And I said, "No. Can I?" And that started it. I started taking private lessons. I got real skates. I started working at the rink to pay for my ice time.
There you go.
And I competed all through college.
It seems that maybe competitive skating versus some more casual form, and this will get me in a moment to my one story about figure skating. It seems like that maybe that there's a difference. I mean, and you can probably say that for any sort of a sport versus doing it competitively and seriously versus more of a casual type of a habit, I guess.
Yeah, recreational skating is, folks basically skating in a circle, going forward. Occasionally folks go backwards, right? But it's a very, one-directional, 1 or 2 basic steps, and it's fun, but it's not something you do all the time.
Yeah.
Competitive skating is, there's a whole world. There's a testing structure to advance what level you compete at. There are 2 different testing bodies. One is ISI, which is a more recreational kind of track. So folks who want to do more than skate in circles, but who aren't going to the Olympics.
I don't think I could even skate in circles. I think of, I like roller skating because I don't have a lot of coordination. I'm not athletic at all. I played football my 8th grade year, and that's as close as I've ever gotten to being an athlete. But knowing that I consider myself, other than talking for a living, to have no talent whatsoever, can I do it?
Yeah.
Really?
Anybody can skate. I mean, most people are my ankles. And I'm like, well, your skates don't fit. That's the problem. Everybody who says that skating hurts their ankles is wearing the wrong size skate.
Okay.
And with a good pair of skates and an understanding of how to balance yourself, which basically kind of like a penguin, wide stance and holding your arms out like you're playing a piano, you're not going to fall.
Okay.
It's the people that try to, take giant steps and their feet come out underneath of them, just like when you're walking on ice, right? You walk too fast, your feet go out from underneath you, and down you go.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where my fear lies, is that I've spent more time slipping and falling on ice than I'll ever confess to.
Same, actually. I am a disaster when there's ice on the ground, which is hilarious, because I'm an ice skater.
Yeah.
But there are group classes, adults take them all the time, and you start with marching on the ice and learning to glide. learning how to fall and get up. And
good, I could get a stunt roll in March of the Penguins.
There you go. But yeah, anybody, I believe anybody can do it. You just have to, be willing to give it a try. And the ISI structure, which is what a lot of Brits use for their beginner, their lessons and their classes, allows for you to advance to their, alpha, beta, gamma, delta levels, which are the very basic skills. And then you go into the freestyle levels where you start to learn how to do more things like spin and jump and do specific turns on the ice, a mohawk and a 3-turn, or names of turns on the ice.
Okay.
United States figure skating, which is the body that sends people to worlds and sends people to the Olympics, has a different structure.
Okay.
But it also has there are levels, and you test. And the people that you see skating at the Olympics are at the senior level, and you have to pass certain tests to be able to skate at that level.
Okay.
So I'm taking 4 tests on Sunday.
Oh my Lord.
4.
Oh my God. No wonder you need a Xanax.
I'm taking 4 tests on Sunday.
And I thought having to compete 3 times at a high school speech meet and the event I was in was bad enough. But
yeah, and I only have 1 person test between each of my tests. So
oh Lord.
I skate, and then
so you don't even really have a lot of time to think about
what
you're doing. How the hell are you going to do this?
Xanax.
Oh, all right.
This episode was brought to you by Xanax and Lexapro.
I got the impression, though, that while you did figure skating in college and you took that and you started to compete, that you went away from it for a while?
I did. When I went to grad school the first time, I was in seminary. I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and seminary was in Lexington, Kentucky. That's 83 miles apart. And I was a full-time graduate school student, and there were no online classes. So that was a lot of commuting. And one cannot commute at that level and also go to school full-time and also work 2 jobs and also figure skate.
Yeah, I could see where that would be a problem.
Rink hours are very specific, and there's a whole politics about which hours happen when, and hockey versus figure skating.
Wait, there are politics involved in skating?
I know you're shocked.
Well, as we were discussing before we started recording again, I blame all that on Tanya Harding. Or really, I guess I blame it on Jeff Gillooly. Was that the bodyguard?
Jeff Gillooly. No, Jeff Gillooly was her husband.
Oh, that's what. Then who was the guy that actually went after Nancy Kerrigan?
I can't remember his name.
I can't remember it either.
Shane Stant attacked the Olympic figure skater with a collapsible baton.
I couldn't make it work, and also financially. Like, skating's not cheap.
No.
Skates are expensive. Ice time is not.
Well, any
not
sort of
prohibitive, but and lessons are not cheap. So I just couldn't keep it up.
Well, any sort of competitive endeavor, I think, is super expensive, and I think that keeps a lot of people from actually doing it, regardless of what it is.
And that's one of the problems with figure skating is that it takes a certain amount of privilege and wealth to be able to even participate in the sport, which is why there are programs like Diversify Ice, which are working to break down that barrier.
Good.
For the financial opportunities, so people are more able to skate. And I love that the Diversify Ice Foundation is doing that work.
Yeah.
But so I couldn't afford it, and I didn't have time, so I stopped.
So what made you get back into it?
I had at my house. I was living in Rockford, Illinois.
Yeah.
And I had in my apartment all of my medals and all of my. You get a patch every time you pass a test.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Oh, like Scouts.
Yes, exactly. You have to earn your passes. And so I had all of those in my house, and my friend Erin came over. I was having some friends over, and she starts pawing through my things, because that's what friends do. They look for your stuff.
Of course, yeah.
And she said, "Wait, you're a figure skater?" I was like, I was. The last time I was on the ice was about 9 years ago, but yes, I have skated. And she was like, "Well, clearly you didn't suck. Look at all of these things." I was like, "Yeah, that's She was like, "So, have you ever done synchronized skating?" I said, "I don't even know what that is." She says, well, we practice at 7:30 on Tuesday nights. I'm giving your name to the coach. See you then.
Oh.
I said, I'm sorry. She's like, you'll love it. And the coach, Jen Karen, may she rest in peace. She passed away 3 years ago from brain cancer.
Oh, my.
The coach, Jen, calls me, says, hi, I'm Jen. I understand you're coming to skate with us. That's not actually what I said.
Yeah, I don't think I agreed to anything, but
tell me more.
Uh-huh.
We'll practice is at 7:30. We wear black yoga pants and a black T-shirt.
Oh, well, black yoga pants and a black T-shirt. Sign me up.
She said, and I'll see you then. And again, I was like, I guess I'm going to skate. Mind you, I had not had skates on my feet in 9 years.
Right.
But I went. And it was a disaster. Oh, my feet hurt. I was fat. I was out of shape. Not just the gain weight. I hadn't used those muscles in that way in 9 years. And there was a program to learn, and I had never skated synchronized skating before, which is 12 to 20 people on the ice connected to one another by their arms, doing all the same thing at the same time.
Boy, that sounds like a stack of dominoes.
It is a beautiful sport at the highest level.
Yeah.
That is not the level I was skating at. I had a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of crying. I cried all the way home from my first practice. And she was like, no, you'll be back. You're on the team now. I was like, what? How did I end up on a team?
I don't even remember saying yes to this.
When did I ever agree to do this?
Uh-huh.
And it happened. I skated for Jen for 9 years.
Wow.
Except for the year I lived in California when I skated for a team called California Gold. But 2009, I started synchro, and that got me back into skating. And I just fell in love all over again, and actually love synchro more than I like skating alone. It is such a wonderful sport, and the team aspect of it, and you're not alone out there by yourself on the ice. Uh-huh. There are other people with you. It was, I had so much fun, and we did competitions like all over the U.S. I've skated in lots of times in Detroit and Kalamazoo and in Minnesota and South Dakota and Portland. I've skated at United States National as a part of California Gold. We placed 7th. I was 7th in the nation at my age level skating.
Wow.
And so it brought me back to the sport.
Was that as good as that competition? What was your biggest moment, I guess?
That's the highest level I've ever placed.
Yeah.
So that was probably my biggest skating moment, was getting to skate at nationals and be a part of a national team that did not play, we didn't place last. There were 12 teams, so we were, 7th is not awful.
No.
It was pretty darn good. We skated to a medley of Queen music, which was even more fun. Skating at United States Nationals is kind of the pinnacle of anyone's skating career, unless you make it to the Olympics or Worlds, right? That is big skating. And at the level I was skating, which is called Masters, that does not mean we've demonstrated mastery of the sport. That means everybody on the ice is 35 or older. And that's the oldest people skating. So at my level, that's a big deal.
I don't mean this to sound the way it's going to sound, but that's like the senior tour?
It is the seniors. It's the senior citizens skating. In fact, on Revolution, the team I skated with in Rockford, the lady that skated next to me was late 60s, early 70s,
wow.
And her grandchildren were on the smaller kids team.
Oh, that's cool.
So the whole generations of folks skate, and it's great. But yeah, I skate on the old people team. But when Jen passed away, she was my coach, and I had been driving from here to Rockford, from Galesburg to Rockford, her last season coaching, and after she passed away, I realized I cannot stop skating again.
Yeah.
This is not a thing I can do.
That helped pretty much every part of your life.
Yeah. So I had to figure out what I was doing then. And so I contacted the rink in Davenport and the rink in Peoria, looking for a coach and skating information, skating times and whatever. And the coach in Peoria contacted me back and was willing to take me on as a student. And so I went to my first lesson in Peoria in the fall of 2018.
Okay.
And that was the first time I had stepped on the ice in 9 years without Jen Karen as my coach, and without, that person being alive. And I cried the whole lesson.
Yeah.
And Jenny, funny, that was Jen, this is Jenny. Kitty cat, kitty cat, kitty cat, kitty cat, kitty cat, kitty cat.
Oh, thank you. Oh, did you see that? That cat just took a big leap over that culvert. It just bounced like it was a spring. That was
kitty cat, kitty cat.
I'm looking straight ahead, and Rebecca saw a cat cross the road, and I didn't see it till it was almost too late. So this episode almost took a dramatic turn. Will the cat be okay? Stay tuned and find out. But yeah, the cat crossed the road, jumped a little culvert in the road, and that was spectacular.
We have a moment.
It was better for me than it was for you, apparently. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I would have been devastated if we had hit a cat. So.
Okay, so
Jenny was great. She just let me cry and figured out where I was skating wise, and so I've been working with her for 3.5 years, and she has pushed me to really deepen my skill level. The thing that I was doing, the things that we were doing with synchro was very, you skate all the same steps and pretty much all kind of at the same level, and I wasn't being pushed.
That's going to be a little daunting. I mean, from one, you were going from one coach to the other, one style, but we're going from one style of skating back to another.
Yeah, so I was going, and I hadn't skated singles, which means I hadn't been doing jumps and spins and that kind of thing for a very long time. And Jenny just pushed, and I was not skating a whole lot, and then she pushed more, and then she pushed more, and then she made me buy new skates.
I knew it. There's an ulterior motive. No,
well, the skates I was in didn't fit well, and they were killing my feet.
Yeah.
And I was not able to skate a long time, so I was having a half-an-hour lesson twice a week, but that's all I was skating.
Yeah.
And she made me get new skates, and I started skating more.
Okay.
And then the pandemic hit.
I was going to ask you about that because I got this sense following you from afar, although not really afar. I don't mean that it's the only term I can think of in my head. That could have damn near killed you.
It could have. And that was the hardest thing because I did not have my outlet.
Yeah.
Right? And I bought a pair of roller skates, but that's not the same. And it helped, but still not the same. The rink was closed.
Right.
For 7 months. Then during all of that time was also the time that Sam and I were doing IVF treatments, and I got pregnant, and then I had a miscarriage, and then the rink reopened. And it was like the heavens saying, hello, we know what you need.
Isn't that, and some of that I think was probably stuff I wasn't necessarily going to ask about, but isn't that funny how that all worked out like that?
Yeah. So, as soon as the doctor said it was okay, I was back at the rink. And I started skating way more.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I was maybe skating an hour and a half a week. Now I'm skating an hour and a half at a time.
Yeah.
3-4 days a week. So my amount of time on the ice has greatly increased, and therefore my skill level has increased. And Jenny has been pushing me all along, and in November...
And pushing you to take Xanax.
Yeah, well, she knows. In November, I took my first test in years. I hadn't taken tests in years.
Yeah.
So I started testing again, and she made me learn ice dance. I had never, in all of my years of skating, I had only ever done quote-unquote freestyle, which is the skating you see.
Right.
Well, the skating you see that has spins and jumps. Spins and jumps is freestyle. And then ice dance.
Exit ramp there just for a second.
Yeah.
This will lead me perfectly into part of my figure skating story.
Okay.
Once upon a time, while I was a lowly college student in Chicago, I was a production assistant for a couple of years at CBS Radio. CBS Radio doesn't exist anymore, which is a whole other thing with me. But anyway, I was a production assistant at WBBM News Radio, and I worked primarily nights with an editor, person in charge, who disliked professional sports, period, with a passion. Like, when WBBM, while I was there, got switched the rights to the Chicago Bears, and one of my jobs, I started running the end of the Bears network that was syndicated to other stations. But he hated professional sports and always referred to that. And he was a very large man who dressed like he could be a member of the mob all the time. And he would always refer to sports as grown men playing children's games. Now, once upon a time when I think the 2002 Winter Olympics were on, I think it was 2002, one night in the bank of monitors in the newsroom, one of the, probably CBS, no, NBC I think at the time, because that's when they started paying $1 gazillion for the rights to every Olympics ever. Figure skating's on TV. And Don looks at the monitor, stops what he's doing cold. He's watching. He turns around and looks at me and says, that must take a lot of skill. I said, you realize you just said that about what is often a professional sport, right? Yeah, but this is the Olympics. I thought, I knew it. I knew there was a way I could break this man. And it turned out it was figure skating. But you just talking just now made me think about that because, that's what you see on TV.
Yeah.
But speaking of an aside, here's my problem with figure skating. It's the only competitive sport that is completely and totally subjective in terms of its judgment, as far as I can tell.
Except it's not anymore.
Okay. Like you're judged in throwing a shot put by how far you can throw the shot put. You're judged, at least at that time in figure skating, by how good somebody thinks you are.
So there is that to an extent. What happened with, I don't know if you remember the great scandal with the Russian Skating Federation and the French judging.
Yeah, I kind of do.
There was this great scandal, right? Skating used to be judged on a 6.0 system, right? And it was very subjective. Now, skating is judged on a system called IJS, and every element has a base value. Everything, every spin has an assigned base value. It's worth X number of points if you do this jump, right? So that takes some of that subjectivity out of it, right?
Okay, in theory, I guess.
In theory. However, then a judge can give you up to +3 or down to -3 based on how you performed that item. So you have the basic points that it's worth, and then you get a grade of execution, how well you did it.
But isn't that still subjective?
That part is. But the base points don't change.
Okay.
So it's taken some of it out.
Okay.
Now, I am currently trialing to be a judge for U.S. figure skating.
Wow.
So
okay.
I have to, there are rules about what I'm allowed to say and not allowed to say. However,
on the podcast, nobody's going to hear.
However, that's the way the system works now, is with a grade of execution. And so judges go through a lot of training, including hours and hours of continuing education. I've got like 300 hours of them right now.
Wow.
Of continuing education and trial judging and kind of norming, so it's not just one person's opinion. A judge is somebody who has gone through all of this process to become a judge on that level. So they've demonstrated that they know how to do judge skating at that level.
Okay.
So it's not quite as, that's a 6.0 as it used to be. And so that's why the scores look so different now. In some ways, that's why the sport has also changed, though, because jumps get more points. And a quadruple jump attempted can often get more points than a triple jump landed well. So you see a lot of people throwing jumps they may not be able to land in order to get the point value, because even with a negative GOE, they still score more points than they had done. So it becomes a numbers game.
Yeah.
So it becomes a bit like Moneyball, but with figure skating.
Can't we just judge everything like American Idol?
Right.
I can text in my favorite 1 million times a day until they get the win.
Right. So, but the judging has always been controversial. It's unfortunate because a lot of times the raw skill and talent can get overlooked, and this is what we were talking about with Tanya Harding.
Yeah.
I think if Tanya Harding were competing in IJS, we would have seen she would have had a much more successful skating career. I mean, she was successful. She made it to the Olympics, right?
Right.
She had to fight the 6.0 system in a way that she wouldn't have to fight quite as hard today, because the IJS would really work in her favor.
But as we also talked about, she, although which probably led her to want to, take Nancy Kerrigan's niece out with a baseball bat, but she had to, and I imagine that this probably happens even more in figure skating than I would think. Like with other sports, if you don't have that privileged background, you have to fight a hell of a lot harder than those people do.
Yeah, skating is an extremely privileged sport.
Yeah.
And there's a reason I couldn't afford to do it for a while,
Sure.
right? As an amateur skater who competes as an adult, all right, I skate 5 hours a week, roughly, and just to get on the ice is $12 an hour.
Wow.
Plus, I pay for a coach, and a half-hour lesson is about $30.
Wow, okay.
Okay? Plus, I have a secondary coach who is less expensive, but that's another coach, that's another cost. Plus skate.
Wow.
A base pair of just the boot is about $500 to $600 for my level. For somebody who skates at an Olympic level, it's about $1,000 for just the boots.
Okay.
Then there's the blades, which are another $500 to $1,000 depending on your level. Plus, they're sharpening the blades every 20 hours of skating, and that's $20 to $40 to get them sharpened, because you have to sharpened by a professional who knows how to handle the hollow of the blade.
Yeah.
And plus there's it adds up quickly. Plus there's a dress. I just had to have a dress made because I've lost so much weight my dress doesn't fit. So you have to buy a dress and tights and jackets and skating clothes and.
You're paying for everything but the Zamboni driver.
Well, that's
probably, yeah.
Right? So it is not a cheap sport.
No.
And if you do not have the means, it's not like there are just people handing out scholarships to figure skaters.
Right.
Right? And, sponsorships are a whole other complicated issue because of, whether or not you're an amateur or professional, where that line is drawn, and how much money you can, earn from sponsorships, if you can even get a sponsor.
Yeah.
But you have to be skating at a certain level to even get a sponsor.
Yeah.
Right? And the higher level the coach, the more expensive. The coaches I'm working with when I go to camp next week are $60 for half an hour.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm paying twice as much for the same amount of time. So it gets really pricey.
Wow.
And then a competition, the entry fee is $100 just for your first event. You usually skate 3 events. And then there are additional charges. You have to pay for your coach to go to the competition, right?
Yeah,
they don't
sure.
just do it out of the goodness of their heart. There's a gate fee for your
Well, my
coach.
God, they should.
There's a gate fee for your coach. There's a fee for them coaching you during the practice session, right? And you have to pitch in with the other skaters to pay for the coach's travel and hotel.
Yeah.
And again, you're paying them to be there.
Uh-huh.
So it's a very expensive sport.
Yeah.
And if you don't have, it takes a lot of privilege, financial privilege, and time. You have to be able to take the time. I'm lucky to work someplace where I can have a somewhat flexible schedule so I can pursue this.
Oh, for sure.
But kids in school, I mean, I start at like 5:30 in the morning and kids are there skating.
Yeah,
and the second
I can't do that.
school gets out in the afternoon, they're skating. Or this year, in some ways, the pandemic, once the rinks open back up, has been good.
Oh, for sure.
Because
Absolutely.
kids doing remote learning have been able to spend more time on the ice,
Yeah, you
have
can't-
a more flexible skating schedule.
You can't really remote learn skating.
No. So a lot of skaters who are trying to get to those higher levels will homeschool.
Yeah. Let me fast forward through all that because, that just all the cost involved seems crazy to me. But
It's expensive, but it's worth it.
Of course. We're less than 10 miles from our destination, so let me get to the couple of other things I wanted to touch on here real quickly. So how'd you end up in the ministry?
That's a whole thing. I grew up in the church.
Sure.
I grew up in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. I'm 6th generation on both sides of my family. My grandfather on my dad's side and his wife, my grandmother Esther, started a church in their basement.
Okay.
And that church then raised enough money to build a building. They're pretty responsible for the starting of that congregation outside of Cincinnati in Forest Park. And my mother also grew up in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. My family has given to the church for years and years. So it's a huge part of who we are. I grew up going to church camp and being an active part of the church. And after college and after being, I was a high school teacher, I hated it, and I worked for a child school psychologist. I was an education consultant. It was great. I loved the job, but it was not fulfilling me.
Yeah.
And I was doing a lot of work at the church. I was volunteering and felt very strongly called to ministry. And God and I had some knockdown, drag-out conversations, one of which involving a tornado. God wins those battles, FYI. If there's a tornado involved, you just say, yes, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't.
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea that's how that worked.
So I came home from that iteration of camp and talked to my minister and said, I think I'm called to ministry and I maybe need to go to seminary. And he said, okay, let's go. And that was in June, and then August I started seminary.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, and I worked as 4 years I was in seminary, and I worked as a student associate minister of a church. I was the minister for the youth minister, and finished seminary, got ordained, and was hired by United Methodist Church to be their director of Christian education, and was there 3 years until someone maliciously outed me as gay and got fired.
That's exactly where I'm going with this, and I'm going to say, and I don't know that everybody ever completely agrees on religion to begin with, but I was raised Catholic, so therefore I think by default I am not a fan anymore, or a lot of organized religion, especially in the Catholic Church where, in my personal opinion, the Church can't even confess to its own sins, so why should I confess to them?
Right.
So that said, that experience that you had, And as you're figuring out who you really are and getting to that point, that had to let you down.
That was devastating.
More than just being out of a job.
The being out of a job thing was the least of the problems, because the job itself was terrible.
Yeah.
I was working 60, 80 hours a week and not paid a lot.
Oh my God.
And had being in ministry, you have very little personal space, and there was a lot of disrespect for my personal boundaries in all ways. And I was learning how to set them, and every time I set one, it would get so. The job itself was bad, and I was already developing an exit strategy. But
okay, so I can finish this conversation. I'm taking a very big detour. Do you have time?
Yes.
All right, good.
So I was like, so that was the loss of a job. I mean, I immediately lost my benefits. There was no severance. I went from having a job to nothing the next day. And I ended up moving in with the person I was dating, who turned out to be a narcissistic, very abusive person.
Oh, God.
Bad. So there was a whole badness of events that happened. But the hardest part was somebody having maliciously outed me, telling business that wasn't theirs to tell.
Yeah.
For the purpose of making me lose my job. I wasn't even allowed to say goodbye.
Wow.
I wasn't allowed to even set foot back in the church. Somebody else packed up my things. Right? It was awful. And it hurt. And I was so mad at God and so mad at the church and so just devastated by it. It was one of the darkest times in my life. God and I were not on good terms, and the church and I definitely weren't.
So what was the point where you ended up back on good terms, do you think?
I'm not entirely sure. It took time, and it was a slow process.
Yeah.
First, I had to figure out what to do with my life as far as work. And Jen Karen, my skating coach, got me some skating jobs, teaching little babies how to march and glide. Right. It got the job done, and I was driving around. I worked 3 different rinks. I was driving to one of the rinks, pondering my life, right?
Sure.
As you do.
Of course.
And really thinking about what it was in seminary that fed me and what I loved most about seminary. And it came down to what I loved most about seminary was the actual research and being in the library and digging into the text. And I swear to you, Will, what came on the next moment, I was listening to NPR, as you do, as a raging liberal.
Oh, jeez. You're one of those.
As a raging liberal, I was listening to NPR, and Chicago NPR is the best NPR.
It is, yeah.
You know.
It's a very good operation.
So I'm listening to NPR, and I swear to you what comes on is this hour of programming is brought to you by a generous donation from Dominican University School of Library and Information Science. Blah, 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 blah. And we're having an information night next Thursday. Here's who to contact. At the moment I had said that my favorite thing was research and library.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, God. I see what you did there. Got it.
Again, funny how that works.
So I said, okay, and
I am really taking a circuitous route. We're about to drive by my apartment.
Okay, I'll wait till Linus.
If he's in the window.
And so I called them and said, hey, maybe I could come to library school. And I did. I went to library school. Got admitted, got a nice little scholarship.
Awesome.
And kitty. What's you and the kitty?
They're around here all the time.
Hi, baby. You just go on away.
He's not going to take that leap that that other one did. Yeah.
So I went to library school with the intention of actually being a seminary librarian. Theology librarianship. There's an entire organization, ATLA, American Theological Library Association.
Yeah.
Isn't that you or is that you?
Not yet, no. This is about to be me.
Oh, this one, yeah.
Yeah, down here.
And so it was great. I had a lovely experience.
Time now for the question, is Linus in the window? And the answer is no.
No, Linus. So my intention was to still have that bond with my seminary career and help other seminarians or other religious studies students in undergraduate institutions, right? And I actually got a peer review article published on Julia Petit, who developed the union classification system. All of this while I'm still in library school. And it was really kind of the perfect marriage of all the things I loved about seminary and a new career option for me.
Yeah, there you go.
And so as that started to congeal, my relationship with God kind of started to heal. And I started attending church again in Chicago. I went to University Church, which is...
That's a dog, by the way, running across the road there, not a cat.
Well, it looks kind of like a bobcat.
Oh, my God, maybe it is. Ooh. Let's see if I can find it.
I think it's a dog. It's a dog.
Yeah, it's a dog.
It's got a butt. It's got like a little dog butt.
That's a... Hi, welcome to Wild Kingdom. You notice this...
Dog.
You'll notice this puma has a butt. That's how you know it's a puma. And now let's go back to Marlon Perkins, who stays in the tent and doesn't ever get attacked by animals.
Man and beast share a pattern of coexistence. There is conflict, of course. Animals sensing danger attack men, and men needing food kill animals. But still there is a natural relationship, a way of life dating back to antiquity. Here and here only can we study life as it was when all of the earth was, in fact, the wild kingdom.
There is a disease ravaging the cicadas right now that causes their butts to fall off.
Well,
look it up. It's a thing.
Story of my life.
And so it can't have sex and mate because its butt has fallen off.
Well, darn the
but
luck
it's still
on that.
alive.
Oh.
It's buttless.
Wow, that's all kinds of problems there.
It does.
That I've never really considered until now. Anyway, so
I started attending this church, University Church. It's a congregation that's both UCC, United Church of Christ, and Christian Church Disciples of Christ. I told the pastor my story, and he was like, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to do anything. You're not going to do any church stuff that you don't want to do. You're not going to get asked to do anything. You're here to worship and heal. And I didn't. And that church brought me back.
That's awfully welcoming.
And I will never forget sitting in the congregation as Lent is beginning, and they had unfurled the Lenten banners, and one of them lists like the sins that everybody needs to repent for during Lent, and one of the sins was homophobia. And I was like, I'm allowed to be gay here, and we look at homophobia as the sin, not homosexuality.
Yeah.
And I was like, my God.
What a novel concept.
It was I was like in tears, and this lovely lesbian couple in front of me that attended the church, they were like, are you okay? I'm like, seeing the homophobia named as a sin just changed me in a way that I didn't know I needed to see that. And they were like, isn't it beautiful to know that you're so celebrated here that people not loving you is the sin? And I was like, yeah. Yeah. And so that church really brought me back to my faith, and me and God got on good terms again.
Great.
And then I finished library school. I got a job at Valparaiso University as a library fellow. It was a fellowship, a diversity fellowship. So suddenly me being gay was a good thing.
Yeah.
And Valpo is Lutheran, and has the largest collegiate chapel in North America. Yeah. Gorgeous. There are services every day, and I went to services every day and was out at my job, going to services. I was asked to preach in chapel. All of these things, I was my whole self.
Everything you should have been doing all along, but weren't able to.
But wasn't able to, and I was felt so full and fully human, fully myself, that I knew that was the kind of job I wanted to do. I had to work someplace where I could do all of the things. And Knox College ended up being that place because I'm the liaison to the Religious Studies Department.
Oh, okay.
Doing the library thing. I get to I preach at the Kensington. I've done Health and Supply. It's all like this magic. I get to be and do theater, and I'm out and gay, and it's wonderful. All in Central Illinois.
All right. So now that you're at Knox College, this is my broad question about your job. Do kids still actually use the library?
Yes, they do. And the job of the librarian has changed a lot.
I would imagine so.
Librarianship is not about the books. Yes, we house the books and we catalog them and we keep them in an order that makes sense so that they can be found on the shelves again, right? That's, yes. Yeah. But what librarianship is about is information literacy.
Yeah.
And making sure that people can find the information they need in a way that is effective, and that they have the skills to determine that it's the information they need, right? So they can evaluate the source, who said it, why did they say it, what credentials do they have to say it, so that when we end up living in a fake news world.
I thought I could get through a whole talk about without fake news coming up. Anyway, carry on.
The reason, like, librarians are the generals in the army defeating this talk about fake news, right?
Don't be rude.
Can you give us a question?
I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
We're the ones leading the charge saying, okay, this is information. This is what's good information. This is where information comes from. That's librarians doing that work and teaching people how to evaluate sources and evaluate information. We're on the front line.
So what you're telling me is that instead of me being the enemy of the people, you're the enemy of the people.
I am the enemy of the people. Librarians are dangerous. We are all about access to information.
Yeah.
There have been cases where librarians fought back against the FBI wanting to see people's search history.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right? Because you're not allowed to do that. That's not, librarians said no.
Wow.
So there's this whole notion that librarians are the ones, when the conservative fake news folks are screaming, do your research, we're the ones teaching people how to do it.
Yeah.
And not on YouTube. Right? Like, here's a legitimate source with good information. Let me show you it.
Exactly why the age we live in is both a blessing and a curse, because you can find almost anything you want on anything you want so easily.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it good research.
Which is why the shift in librarianship has been from teaching people how to find the things to teaching people how to evaluate things.
Yeah.
Making sure that what you found is useful and good for your purposes. Now, that's not to say that it's automatically like a peer-reviewed journal is automatically the perfect thing, because there's a whole system of oppression and racism that has built up the academy and the publishing industry in a way that diverse voices aren't always heard.
Yeah.
However, you have to have the skills of source evaluation to even know that.
Yeah.
So, librarians are probably more important now than we possibly have been in 100 years, because we are teaching, and the world of information has changed so much that without a librarian helping you navigate it, you're A, not going to find effective resources, and B, maybe not find good ones. And so it's a huge shift, but the career has changed such that we really are on the front line of the war against fake news. And yes, I'm happy to be a general in that war.
All right, since we are almost there, I will say that I didn't even get to the part of the story that I really wanted to get to about you and Sam, your partner, because I think, because I think the world of you guys.
Aw.
And
you should have Sam on.
I'll have to, because does he need to go figure skating in Peoria?
No, but I'm sure we'll find something he needs to do.
Well, this has been one. I'll just say this hasn't gone the way I thought it would, but it's fine.
It's fine.
I'm thrilled thrilled you consented to this, and again, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have thought about doing this at all.
Well, I'm glad. It is awesome.
Well, Becca, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for driving me to... This all worked out beautifully.
Thank you once again to Rebecca Yowler for being the guest in the pilot episode of Get in the Car. Not all of our conversations made it into the final cut, so look for some bonus footage sometime in the future. While I referred to Becca as the inspiration for this type of podcast, a number of friends have been encouraging me for a long time to be a podcaster, and I'm grateful to all of you. And hopefully things keep moving up from here, and hopefully I'll be able to do more episodes. That's where you come in. Email me at willstevensonpodcast@gmail.com and tell me what you think. Again, that's willstevensonpodcast@gmail.com. If you're in Illinois and want to go on a road trip with me, either where you drive or I do, that's also where to contact me. If you like what you heard and want to sponsor Get in the Car, that's what will keep this going. So get a hold of me and we'll work it out. And who knows, that bonus footage I brought up a minute ago will probably be a good vehicle for Patreon. Get in the Car is hosted and produced by Will Stevenson. Production music, Hide and Seek, Cruise Control, and Feather Duster are from Shane Ivers at silvermansound.com. Copyright 2021 by me, Will Stevenson. Thanks for listening. Please drive safely and be kind to one another.